What up, you guys? Today I want to look at this video with Chris Brown. And if you're not familiar with Chris Brown, basically let me give you this quick bio. Chris Brown was a comic artist and cartoonist. He was born May 16, 1952. Sadly, he died February 5th, 2023. Full name was Christopher Kelly Brown, a cartoon comic strip artist. He was the son of cartoonist Dick Brown and brother of cartoonist Chance Brown. So a long history of cartooning. And basically, he created something called Hagar. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that comic strip. And I guess I should have said this is basically Chris Brown cartooning tips. So let's see the kind of tips he has for us. Tune in, Chris Brown. Let's see.
This is a template, and comic strip cartoonists have a little piece of mat board like this that they can quickly make a comic strip so they don't have to figure out the math every single time. The inside area of a comic strip generally is 3 inches tall by 10 inches wide. And comic strips vary a little, but that's basically the shape that a comic strip is going to be. So,
Didn't know, but this is why you kind of watch these videos and you start to learn. So 3 inches high, 10 inches long, that's what a comic strip is. Get a ruler and figure that out.
Pick a second one like this. The paper I use is Strathmore Series 500 plate paper, which is kind of expensive, but there are other papers out there. Basically, any kind of Bristol board is a good paper to use for making comic strips. And when you're doing comic strips, you'll do 6 cartoons that are this size every week, and you'll do a Sunday page that's larger and has more panels to it.
So that's the original art for the reproduction. The 3 inches high, 10 inches long. That makes sense because I'm pretty sure they're usually about 2 inches high and about 4 to 5 inches. I'm not too sure beyond that, but that's crazy. He's just buying regular paper. And I think the paper thing, when you're really starting off in cartooning, you don't realize, but you need to find the paper that works best with you. You can't just use any paper. As you get deeper into it, you're going to start seeing that the tools you like to use are going to work better with different kind of paper textures, and then that's when it's really going to make a difference, right? So like for an instance, I know Jim Rugg was talking about when he does his ballpoint art, he uses normal computer paper, but I've also seen him when he uses his nibs, he likes to use like traditional comic book sheets, you know? And so it just kind of depends the tool that you're using. The paper really is going to reinforce it or take away from it.
All right, so that's that. Now I'll just go right on to the next part. These are rough cartoons. They don't have to be perfect, they just have to get the idea across. Here is Hagar charging a castle, and they've positioned an elephant in the way. So Hagar is turning to Lucky Eddie, his first mate, and he's saying, "Go back and get a mouse." The idea being that elephants are supposed to be afraid of mice. So what I do is I take this rough idea and I draw it on my pre-cut piece of Bristol board, and I develop it. I try to refine the drawing. I make whatever changes I have to the...
That is, I'm assuming now, listening to Jim Davis and now to Chris Brown, that this is a normal thing for strip artists, right? So like they do the rough, and those are the roughs that I'm assuming that the inker and colorist for the Garfield strip would use, right? And I really like that it's really panned out in like, you know, him just free flowing and just kind of throwing it on the paper. But then in the finalized version of it, it's definitely pushed in from the angle and everything just looks a little bit better, more defined. And I think that goes with just chewing it over and realizing like, okay, what it is, like what is the meat and bone of this setup and punchline.
Right. So now instead of an elephant, I've got an elephant holding a sword, and I've done a little more detail in the castle. I've made Hagar and his crewmates larger, and basically instead of the 5 crewmates, I've only got 4 now. I fired one. And they're holding a battering ram, and here a rain of arrows are coming down on them. And when you're doing cartooning, one of most important things about cartooning is to know which end of the pencil is for what. This end, of course, is to draw, but this is actually the most important part of the pencil. The most important thing is to be able to go back and erase over and over and over until you've got the character right, until you've got the drawing right. So what I'm going to do...
You see, and for him, that makes sense. If you're gonna erase a lot, you need thick paper. Like if you've ever tried to erase like hard pencil lines on computer paper, that ain't gonna work well for you. And for his style of cartooning, because he uses like dark lead, doesn't use blue line, because of that, then it makes sense. Even though you can erase from blue line, but regardless, even if you start getting smudges and things like that with blue line, it's not gonna transplant itself on the reproduction. But using dark pencil, you need that strong paper, because once he's done inking, he's gonna have to erase this shit.
I didn't do a very good job on Lucky Eddie here, and I'm going to erase him. He's got a kind of a beautiful, elegant neck like a swan, and one big googly eye, and a nose sort of like a piece of fruit or a vegetable, maybe a cassava or an egg.
And I have to say this, right? You see the way he's holding the pencil? He's holding the pencil like that because it's actually better for cartoonists. I don't have that habit. I have a really bad habit. Like I seen Ed Piskor talk about it one time, where he does this thing where he puts a lot of pressure on his fingers, and that's why he was showing how like his fingers had like indented in, and it's a really bad habit. But I have that habit as well. Like I draw like this with my pencil. Luckily I don't pencil too much, and when I do use my brush, I'm a little looser on my hand. But you can tell that this guy's been cartooning for a long time, and that he comes from a family of cartoonists, because that's actually better for your hand. It's better for your fingers to draw like that. I think there's a video with Neil Adams talking about that, and I might look that up so that we can go ahead and peep that out together. But it was this idea that you would be able to draw longer if you drew like this. If you draw like this, there's only so much you can do before you're tired out.
Plant. And he wears a funnel for a hat, kind of like the Tin Woodsman from The Wizard of Oz. And he has stringy hair. There, Lucky Eddie's looking quite perplexed. Well, actually, I made him too big. Well, see, that's why we have an eraser. There we have Hagar and Lucky Eddie and the crew doing battle with a well-armed elephant. So this will now be inked and lettered, and then I'll send it off to the syndicate in New York City. They'll make copies of it, and they'll distribute it all over the country. 2
points. One, he doesn't say who's gonna ink it, or I wanted to see his inking process, because this is not a finalized product yet, right? Like this isn't it fully completed. Like I want to see him ink it and then see whether or not he erased it, or there's another trick to the trade.
And it'll be appearing in newspapers in about a month and a half.
And that was that video, you guys. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. We're gonna keep building this thing up. Late.